By the end of this video, you're gonna have the exact recipe to my AI attention hacking system that lets me and my 500 plus clients create over 200 posts in under 30 minutes. And no, this isn't GPT slop. They're highly converting video scripts and posts that actually sound like you, build a real brand, and acquire high quality clients. The funny truth is, the main difference between the top business owners and those struggling to even make sales, let alone scale, is their ability to consistently produce creative content that attracts a high volume of qualified viewers and converts them. So if you're tired of hiring content people who don't understand your business, using AI tools that make you sound like everyone else, and overall spending way too long recording content that barely converts, you need to watch this video, take notes, and leave them in the comments. My name is Gianna Cambria, founder of Upper Hand Creative, and I know that this system works because it's personally allowed me to scale my company to multiple seven figures in less than 18 months. Now, I'm not saying that content alone generated all of that or that they're even typical results, but content is part of a bigger marketing and sales engine, and ultimately, it's been the thing that allows all of our other efforts to work. Without it, we wouldn't have even half of these results. And we've seen what it can do for our clients as well. So just to show you what's possible, David got 10 new clients from his very first video, and now most of his new clients coming in have already been exposed to his content, making the sales process easier. Dr. Loretta doubled her revenue each month after implementing our system, growing from 12 new patients a month to 25 plus per month. Quasi got 1 million views on short form content without filming a single new video. And Vanessa went from having years of backlog content that she couldn't use to having 3 months of content scheduled and ready to go. Now, by the end of this video, you'll have 6 complete modules. First, the content operating system framework that turns your expertise into a scalable machine. Second, how to identify your unique delivery style so content feels natural. Third, the source content system that gives you infinite material from what you already know. Fourth, the machine, the AI automation that creates content in your voice. Fifth, the psychology behind content that actually converts prospects into buyers. And sixth, how to optimize and scale this into a self-running business asset. Before we dive into the first module, there's something crucial that I want to cover. Because one of the top success killers I've seen in the past few years is the perspective business owners have on content. So let me explain what I mean. Most business owners see content as just marketing or another way to get new clients. But really, it's the foundation of modern branding that opens doors for things like hiring top talent. And it directly correlates with the quality of clients that you're able to attract, and it accelerates your business growth no matter what you're doing for your marketing. So for example, look at Ryan Serhant. He built multiple businesses from social media, which allowed him to build this brand that attracted top talent quickly. And because of that, his brokerage Serhant did $1 billion in sales volume in 35 days. Compare that to traditional brokerages that take 10 to 20 plus years to reach that same number. Why? Because of the brand that he built. Everybody wanted to go to work for him. Another example, look at what Alex Hormozi just did with his launch. We could sit here for hours. We could reverse engineer everything that he did. We could look at and study every single tactic. We could mirror it perfectly. We could copy his webinar. We could do all of that. We could do everything exactly as he did it, but we're probably going to come nowhere near the results that he was able to generate. Why? Because behind his success was the brand that he built. Because he was already known, because he was already trusted, because he owned this niche, he was able to 10x, maybe even 100x the results that he could have normally gotten from any other marketing effort. And how did he build that brand? In the beginning, he was creating content, and content that didn't necessarily generate views right away. Eventually it did, and it led to that and him being known, but content that didn't necessarily generate him clients right away either, right? He went years before even making an offer in his content, before even selling anything. And he was building up that brand over time. And that's why if you see content as just another way to generate new clients or generate leads, you're going to have a very short-term view on that. Content is a long-term game, and if you see it for what it really is and see it for the power that it has in building a brand and all the things that that can do for you, you're going to have a much longer-term perspective on it, which is going to allow you to stay more consistent with it. If you're expecting to put up a few posts and generate views and generate leads right away, you're going to be sorely disappointed because that's really not the true power behind content. Right? It fills in all these gaps that your other marketing is not hitting. So somebody hits an ad, they don't convert right away, they don't opt in right away. Maybe they're getting hit with competitor ads, right? As soon as they click on that one, their feed's getting flooded with all these other ads, and they forget about you. They move on. You might have retargeting ads set up, right? Where they're going through that and they're seeing you continue to pop up on their feed through those retargeting ads, but you're paying for each one of those touch points. Whereas if you have good organic content and a brand, they're going to continue to get served your organic content as well in their feed. And you're going to be top of mind and then be presented with that daily. And so when they're finally ready to opt in or solve that problem or whatever it is that your thing is solving, they're ready and they remember you over any other competitor. And secondly, you need to remember that we're trying to sell high ticket services, right? So chasing views might make you feel good, but it's not going to make your pockets feel heavier. And the reason why is if you copy what Mr. Beast does with his content, sure, he's a great entertainer. Yes, he understands human psychology. He understands what gets attention and how to harness it. But his style of content is going to be very different than the content you need to be creating as a high ticket service provider to actually sell your product or service. Mr. Beast is selling hamburgers and chocolate bars to the masses. So his content should be getting as many views as possible and be appealing to the millions, to the masses. As a high ticket service provider, you solve likely a very specific problem for a very specific group of people. And there's qualifications that have to happen within that for those people to be good clients for you. And that means you don't want all of your content to be servicing the masses. All right, now that we actually have a good perspective on content, we understand that it's a long-term game and we're seeing it in the right way. Let's build you the system that's going to allow you to produce content consistently.
Module 1 is about the content operating system. But first, I want to explain why most entrepreneurs are stuck as the bottleneck in their own content creation and the fundamental difference between content strategy and content systems. So if you're thinking how to package your ideas into posts, you're already losing. Strategy is the battle plan. It's what you're going to talk about. It's the style that you're going to do it in, the overall positioning of your brand. It's basically the ideas. Systems are the execution. How do we script it? How do we film it? How do we package it? What's the hook going to be? Now, most people get stuck in the weeds with content because they're thinking about both of these things at the same time, but they are two different tasks entirely. As the founder, you should only be involved in the strategy part. The raw ideas, the insight, the direction, and the systems need to take care of the execution for you. If you study the biggest brands in the space, this is what they all do. They don't create content, they create content systems. Their team and their systems handle the entire execution for them. So the way that we do this is with a 4-step framework: offer, operationalize, output, and optimize. The first step, offer, is all about positioning and packaging of your solution. And it's probably the most important part. When you look at any business, there are really only 3 levers that you can pull at any given time. And if something isn't working, it's usually an issue with one of these 3. So the first one is traffic. Are you getting enough eyeballs on your business? And this is usually the problem for most. It's just not enough visibility and not enough people knowing who you are. Second is leads. So from those eyeballs, are you moving people into conversations? Are they giving you an email address and a phone number with the intent to learn more? So third is sales. Out of those people who did have a conversation with you, are we actually closing those people into becoming clients or customers? And so that's why you need to, A, first understand your perfect client inside and out so that you know how to get their attention. To get eyeballs, you have to know what's going to get their attention while they have no idea who you are and they're in the middle of something else completely. And to do that, you have to thoroughly understand the pain that they're in now. That's your top of funnel content. But you also need something super compelling in the middle that takes an eyeball and turns them into a lead. Now, this usually gets communicated in something like a webinar or a video sales letter or even a YouTube video, and we call it the lead mechanism. So this is basically how you communicate your solution, and it's selling the vehicle, not your program or not your company, but the vehicle. So for example, if you build funnels, your vehicle is a funnel. If you're a fitness coach, your vehicle is your particular methodology, like fasting or keto or functional strength training. So they need to believe wholeheartedly that your vehicle is the thing that will take them from where they are now to where they want to be. So to do this, you also have to know how to package your offer in a way that's appealing to your perfect client and positions it as the pathway. Not another option, not an improvement on an existing path, but a new pathway forward. Now, there's a great book on this concept called Play Bigger that basically talks about how to build your new category or your new opportunity and own it. And this is how you stand out from everyone else in your space. And to do this well actually takes a lot less profoundness and Elon Muskness than you might think. You just have to own the problem better than anyone else, which again means that you need to understand the problem that your audience has and understand it in the way that they talk about it, understand it in the words that they use. So for example, Salesforce disrupted the entire software industry just by owning the problem. When Salesforce first started, the market was software, right? You buy the actual disk was usually like hundreds of thousands of dollars. You'd install it locally on your computers, and there was no cloud computing. There was no accessing it later on the internet like we're used to now. So whatever computer it was installed to, that was the one you had to use it on. Salesforce came out, and instead of saying, hey, we're a better version of a CRM that you can access via the internet, they didn't do any of that. They didn't even really talk about their solution. They just said, death to software. It's expensive. It's annoying. You can't add it to other computers. You can't access it from anywhere. And they evangelized the problem and created a movement well before they even released their actual product. That's how they blew up. Another example of this is Uber. They did the same thing. They didn't say, hey, we're a better taxi. They said, getting a taxi sucks. You stand on the street, waving your hand around. You don't know where they're coming from or when they're going to arrive or when you're going to get to your destination. And then they offered the alternative. This is exactly what Russell Brunson talks about with his big domino. It's the core belief that you need your audience to believe, because once they do, all other objections become irrelevant. And this becomes a central thread behind the marketing thesis. It's the argument behind your big domino belief that's designed to meet your audience where they're at and bridge the gap in their minds on how your vehicle is going to take them to where they want to go. So that's why we start here with content strategy. We leverage all of this to create what we call a blueprint and a marketing playbook that defines it all in detail and becomes the foundation of all content we create in the future. It's how we think about separating a brand and creating brand positioning by actually evangelizing the problem, not selling the solution. Now, once you have all this in line, then you can move to phase 2, which is operationalize. This is where you build your foundation and get everything in place for the basis of your content systems later. So it's one part of a brand to have everything that I talked about above, the offer, the positioning, the strategy, but the other half is you as the founder, your values, your ideas, your personality, your stories, your insights. Ultimately, that is what's going to separate you from anybody else who may be doing the same thing in your space. The way to systematize this is by capturing or gathering it all up front. And this is what we call content DNA. It consists of 3 things: your founder DNA, case studies or social proof, and an ongoing story bank. So first, your founder DNA. This is just things like your origin story, how you came up with the framework you teach, or how you got to where you are today. It's your hero story. You also want to throw stories and insights from along the way in your past of things that, got you to where you are now, or things that you learned that make you who you are today. Include your personal beliefs and core values and stories around that. Now, there's 2 options here. Either one, you already have all of this stuff in existence. So maybe you've done podcast interviews, or you've written a book, or you do webinars and your origin story is probably in there. Any of that stuff, you're going to want to grab the transcriptions for it and compile it all into a single Google Doc. Okay, or if you don't already have it, or maybe some of it's missing, you're going to want to create it using voice memos. So just keep it simple. Grab your phone, record your stories in a brain dump or a rant, your insights, anything you want to share. You can pretend you're being interviewed and drop that all in there and then transcribe it and put it in your Google Doc. Now, pro tip, you can explain to ChatGPT what you're doing, about your brand, your vision for it, and you can have it generate interview questions for you to prompt your voice notes. So you want to do the same process for all of your case studies and all of your client stories, big or small, right? So if you don't have them already officially recorded in a case study or a testimonial, just record it in a voice memo and again, transcribe all of it, paste it into a single Google Doc. Now, your personal transformation story here, your before and after, especially if you're selling to your old self, is going to be key. So you're going to want to put that in here as well. And then third is the ongoing story bank. So the first part, the founder DNA, covers existing and past knowledge, things that have already happened to you, stories that have already happened, and insights of how you've learned what you already know. But you're going to want to share your journey as you go through it. And that's where the ongoing story bank comes in. This is a really good way to relate and connect with your audience as they can see your growth and see your journey here. So as things come up, as ideas spark, as you have conversations with clients or friends, things happen in the news within your industry that you react to, record all of it in the moment in a voice memo, and then continue to add those transcripts to your ongoing story bank. Now, this part alone is what most AI content tools miss completely. So you'll end up getting back generic slop that might write a good hook or maybe follows good common marketing advice, but your voice is completely absent. This is better than any copywriter because it can routinely search your content DNA to pull in relevant stories into your scripts. All right, so next you're going to want to think about how you want to represent yourself visually. So this means things like social templates. How are we going to package the offer visually? What does your brand look like? And this is the stuff that makes someone land on your profile and immediately get a sense of who you are and what you're about. So ways that you can stand out when creating your visual identity are things like handwritten fonts. So if you go to a site like calligrapher.com, you can actually fill out a form with your own handwriting and create a font from your handwriting. So this gives you a really unique look and feel. You also want to think about what colors you want to use. Not that it has to be 100% consistent or branded across every single video you do, but you do want to have some cohesive thought and intentionality behind the look and feel. So what color palette do you want to use? Think about your personality showing in static quote posts or in carousel posts. So if you look at a few examples here of the difference in the look and feel visually of these quote posts, right? So here's a guy, Stephen Meller, and we can see he's got a very distinct white font here that he uses, right? And so while each post is a little bit different, it still shows his brand, and even the way that he films his content in the back here. So here are his static quote posts. He's just doing the typical tweet screenshot. That works. If that's the route you're going to go, then pick whether you want it to be a dark background or a light background or however you want that to look. But if you want to do something a little more unique, right? He's got these really cool, like this one, for example, these handwritten things where he just has it. He's got cool handwriting and he just puts it in his notebook here. So that's one way that you could stand out visually with your static quote posts. Another example, Cody Sanchez swaps between quite a few. So for her static quote posts, sometimes she'll use actual pictures from her book. So screenshots from her book here, which is a unique way to do that. And then lately she's been doing these really simple, what I'm assuming is her own handwriting, or maybe it's a font with just a little initial in the bottom here. So that's another way to do it. And you can see these are kind of sprinkled throughout. She had a few different ones. So this one actually has a highlight to it, but super simple. I mean, you could make them more in design if you wanted to do it that way. And then you see, here's another example, right? So this is just type font that looks like, again, it could come from her book. Even these, right? Where she's got this sign with a photo of her. So different ways that you can stand out there. And then when it comes to looking at the visual identity of your actual videos, right? This guy has a completely different stylization. So you can see he's got this kind of interesting font. Even the filters on his footage here follow that color font. And so every time you see his reel, you know that it's this guy. So next, you also want to think of your profiles as a funnel. If your profiles aren't optimized to send traffic to your lead mechanism, you're not going to convert. So someone can watch your content, love it, click to your profile, and then have no idea what to do next, or worse, get caught up in something else and get distracted. That's a leak in your funnel. So we treat your entire brand presence like a funnel. Every piece has a job to do, and it all points somewhere intentionally. So people should instantly know who you are and how you can provide value for them when you land on their page. You don't want to make them guess if they're your audience or not. So a few ways that we do this. Number one is we want to optimize the bio, especially in your Instagram or your Facebook or even your YouTube, very specifically saying what you do and who you do it for. You want to mention the outcome, selling the vehicle, not the thing, not the company. So again, a couple examples here. So you can see with Stephen, very clear what he does, helping creators build automated low ticket funnels, very specific, right? And then he even has a credibility statement here as well, which is great. So if you have that social proof of some kind, you want to add that in there. And then your last line is basically going to your middle of funnel or your opt-in, right? So this could be your VSL page. This could be a case study training that you've made. This could be a lead magnet, right? And for him, true to style, his goes to his low ticket options, right? That you can grab right there. Okay, so here's another great example of a really well optimized bio. So you can see here at the top, bite-sized marketing automation tutorials. I know right away whether I want to follow this guy or not. A little bit of credibility there, Zapier ambassador. He has his contact right there, and then he has his links to his next steps, right? So learn more from me or whatever it is that he's promoting right here in the moment. Okay, so that first line, very specifically again, saying what you do and ideally who you do it for, or through the process of what you do, it's clear who you do it for. And then the next part, if you have it, some sort of social proof or credibility. And the third part is your CTA leading to the next step that you want them to take. Now, beyond the bio, the other thing that you want to do is create pinned posts. These should grab your ideal client right away. So if you are even starting a brand new profile, this is the first thing you want to do is bio and pinned posts. Because again, you want, when people land on your profile, you want them to know instantly that they can get value from you and that you're someone they actually want to follow. Your first 3 posts can do this extremely well. So we think about it like this. The first pinned post should be your origin story. This shows who you are and makes you relatable, while at the same time painting the picture of what life can look like on the other side. We call it a start here post. So for example, here is a really great example of one from Gannon, and he even has a little video in the background instead of a static picture. You can see here he's got handwritten font custom to him. But as you go through, it starts with his backstory, right? So he's sharing his story growing up, didn't have a lot when I was growing up, blah, 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 all these things, right? And eventually you're going to get to the part, so he's going through all of his struggles here, and you're going to get to the part of what life looks like now and an invitation to continue to follow him. Now, it doesn't specifically have to say start here. You can do it in a much more subtle way. So a great example of that would be Brandon here. And you can see his 3 posts look authentic up at the top, but they're pinned and they do tell his story, right? So if you click in here, you have 2.1 high school GPA to 3 million in sales in the last 2.5 years, right? So a little more subtle version of a start here post. This one as well. Well, this is actually an offer that he's running. And then this is just a lifestyle post. So just different things there where people will be able to get to know you right away. And then they can also see the journey that you've been on. So then they can go, oh, this guy's not just this massive success story that's, 10 years ahead of me, but I can actually see myself in his story and I can relate to him. It just gives people an entry point into authentically connecting with you, which is going to be huge for your brand. So the second post is generally a breakdown of your vehicle and why it works, or your methodology. An example of this for us is actually our ads that we run. This has been a pinned post for us in the past where there's a direct call out with the benefit or the thing or the pain that people are experiencing or that they want, right? So if you want to get all of your content done in less than 4 hours per month, then here's what you need to know, right? And then I go directly into exactly how we deliver that and what that looks like. The third post is some form of social proof. This could be your personal transformation story, your before and after, or it could be a client's. But you want to tell it in a story. Now you could swap posts 2 or 3 for just an overall lifestyle post like I showed you a minute ago. Mine happens to be a core value post. We've had so many people say, hey, I was looking for an answer to content creation and then I saw your post on this and I knew that because of it, you were the team that we wanted to work with. And the same thing has happened for hiring. I've had people that have wanted to come work for us simply because they could see this on my Instagram and they know who I am and they know my values and what they're getting. And at the same time, we've had people that have totally steered clear and probably went with a competitor for that reason. And those are people that probably would not be the best fit for our program anyway. Okay, so once you have that in line, your bio is optimized, your profile is optimized, you have some powerful pin posts ready to go. The next thing is to set up your tech and your software. This is gonna help you automate things. So for us, Upper Hand AI is our AI creative director, and this is the main software that helps us systematize the content creation from research to script writing to post copy and everything in between. This is already trained up on our content DNA, frameworks, and viral database. And the viral database is a collection of creators in and out of your niche that you can research and model. More on that in a minute. Then we have a publishing software. This is what's going to post to your profiles for you. Now the key here is you want to have something called auto cues and not a posting calendar. So the difference between auto cues and a posting calendar, right? What most people do is they pull up a calendar for the month and they say, okay, this is a holiday. We want to put a post about the holiday here. And then on Friday, I'm going to post this particular reel. On Tuesday, I'm going to post a client transformation story. On Thursday, I'm going to post an educational reel, right? And you don't want to do that. What you want to do instead is be able to dump all of your content once it's done, ready, and approved with captions, dump it into your publishing software. Maybe you tag it, right? So this is a reel, this is a top of funnel reel, this is a carousel post, whatever, however you want to categorize them. And then based on that, based on the fact that they're approved and that they have a tag and the platform they're posting to, they'll go into a queue. The queue is what has the time slots attached to it. So for example, instead of me picking individual posts for each day on my calendar, I'm saying, okay, I'm posting a reel every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 3 p.m., 1 p.m., and 6 p.m., or whatever it is, right? And then Tuesday, I might post a carousel post. Wednesday, I'm posting a client transformation story, whatever it is. And then each one of those is a queue. Based on the tags that the content has, that content then goes into its respective queue. And so the queue is always full as I'm creating content. And rather than me figuring out what I'm posting today, just as soon as that time slot is up for that queue, the next post that's approved in the queue is going to go out. This way, you can set up your posting calendar once and forget about it. Now for us, we have our own publishing software called Upper Hand Social, but there are plenty of good ones out there. Particularly if I wasn't using Upper Hand Social, I'd probably use something like Metricool. And then you want to set up something called ManyChat or the equivalent of it, which is basically going to handle automated responses when middle of funnel content generates conversations. So it pushes people to where we own the traffic. This is huge, right? Because we don't want our audience to only live on our social media where it's vulnerable. If Mark Zuckerberg decides tomorrow that he doesn't like your Instagram page and he bans you, you have no way of reaching out to that audience that you've built. So we want to push people to where we own the traffic, where they give us an email. And now we have them on an email list where regardless of what happens with our social media that day or our social media platform, we have those email addresses and we can reach out to them. And then that method, the email, the text message blast, whatever it is for you, is then going to push them toward the lead mechanism where they can decide to move into the sales process. And so ManyChat basically automates this whole thing for you. When you see people saying, comment the word PDF down below and I'll send you this thing, ManyChat or something that is equivalent to it is basically responding to that keyword automatically, speed to lead, and making sure that that PDF goes out to that person, moving them through the funnel. And then the last part of this is we want to actually place the talent. Now we call them a content specialist. This is the person who's going to run the entire system for you. All of this setup is important because what it does is allows one person to run the whole machine without you being involved in the day-to-day. So once all of this is in place, now we can actually start producing content, and that brings us to phase 3, which is output. Now I'm going to break this down in depth here in the following modules, but the quick overview of the output phase is essentially you take source content, which is coming directly from you, the founder. It's in your voice, typically going to be a voice memo or existing content that you want to repurpose. Essentially takes a raw idea or brain dump, and then the system is going to take that source content and map it into top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel posts, different formats, making sure the hook is there. Is it a YouTube video? Is it an Instagram reel? All of the above. So again, the system is going to execute on that. And so your job as the founder is only that first part, which is creating the source content. And then the last stage is optimize. So once you have content going out on every platform, you just want to be able to look back, see what's working, look at the data, see what's performing well, double down on the things that are working, and make sure that you have a few posts every month that are a little bit more experimental to test new ideas and always search for new winners. Just like you would if you're looking at an ad creative account where we might be talking about allotting a certain amount of your budget to test new ideas. You're allotting a certain amount of your posts to test new ideas with organic content as well. So now that you understand the operating system foundations, let's get personal. Because the biggest mistake I see online business owners make is trying to sound like someone else. Now, before jumping into the next section, I know some of you will be thinking, this is great, but I don't have the time or knowledge to actually implement all of this by myself. So I'm going to leave a link in the description below where you'll be able to book in a call with my team, and that'll give you clarity on whether getting this done for you, like we've done for hundreds of business owners to this point, makes sense for you or not. Now, module 2 is all about identifying your unique delivery style and then finding the scalable version of you. And this part is critical because authenticity is huge for content performance. So if you're showing up trying to be something else, or you're trying to force yourself into a script that doesn't match how you naturally communicate, something is going to be off and people will notice it subconsciously. I see this happen all the time. People are looking at the biggest players in the space because they think, oh, they're getting millions of views. That's who I should be emulating. So they're looking at the Alex Hormozis, they're looking at the Grant Cardones, and they're trying to copy exactly what they're doing. And so number one, they're copying their style, which means immediately you're blending in with everybody else, right? Back in the day when everybody was copying Alex Hormozi style reels and it was like the fluorescent captions and all of that, right? Everybody looked the same. Second, you lose authenticity because what Alex's gift is, how he explains things, his voice that he uses is not the same as yours. And so if you are not authentically in line with that style and you're trying to morph yourself into that, people are going to notice. But third, and probably most important, is what these brands did in the beginning is a totally different strategy than what they're doing now. Once you get to millions of followers, it's a totally different ballgame when it comes to content. So even if you're not emulating his voice, even if you're not so much emulating his style, but you're looking at what he's covering in terms of content topics or formats or any of that, and you try to directly copy it, chances are it's not going to perform well. And if you're just trying to force yourself into something you're not, think about when you watch someone and something just feels off about them. You can't really put your finger on it, but they don't seem genuine for whatever reason. That's essentially what happens when someone is trying to be someone they're not on camera, and that's how your audience responds. Whether or not they're saying it, their subconscious is picking up on those micro expressions, the forced energy, the unnatural speech patterns. And again, they might not consciously think this person is being fake, but they're just going to scroll past and not engage. So to understand which content style is truly you, you have to identify the individual communication mode which feels most natural to you. And the other part to this is, if you're constantly forcing yourself into something that you're not, you're going to hate doing it. You're going to dread it every time that content creation is on your calendar. Content requires consistency over the long run. So if you hate it, you're going to have a hard time doing it long enough to be consistent enough to see the results, which is why to understand which content style is truly you, you have to identify the individual communication mode, which feels most natural to you. After working with hundreds of businesses, I've learned that there are typically 4 main communication modes that people fall into. Most people are a combination, but there's usually one dominant mode. So the first is the talker. The talker is somebody who thinks out loud. Usually you process things verbally. You're a natural storyteller maybe. And if you're someone who can just start talking about your expertise and go for 20 minutes without notes, you're probably a talker. These are people who do their best thinking while speaking, and they want to discover what they want to say as they're saying it. Next up is the writer. These are people who process through text. Maybe you love frameworks and you love to give detailed explanations. So if you find that you get your best thoughts out, even in a raw brain dump, if your natural instinct is to start with writing, whether that's handwritten or even typing, then you're probably a writer. Next is the teacher, and typically this is going to involve some kind of a prop, whether that's a whiteboard or slides, if you feel really comfortable with that. But typically you are in your element when you can take something complex and break it down step by step. You see slides, you see frameworks, you see diagrams or drawings, right? Russell Brunson is famous for this. And if people always tell you, you should teach this, or you explain things so clearly, you're probably a teacher. And the last is a storyteller, and you're just naturally good at using a narrative or pulling in case studies, emotional connection. If you naturally share client stories or personal experiences to make your points, you're probably a storyteller. Or if you can go through the whole detail and build suspense and people are just waiting on pins and needles for the next part of your story, you're probably a storyteller. You don't just give information, you wrap it in stories that build an emotional connection with people to help them learn. But the most important part is you want to find your way in that's going to be easy for you to do on a daily basis and doesn't feel like a chore. Because again, your content needs to match your natural communication style or you won't be consistent with creating it. So if you're most comfortable in conversation, you're probably not going to do your best in starting to write out your thoughts or trying to write a script. And vice versa. If you love writing, you're going to find it really weird probably to send voice memos or even brain dump your thoughts audibly. So just identify which one fits you best and hold on to that as we move on. This is opposite of most of the advice that you hear out there because a lot of times they're going to tell you start by writing a reel, right? Or start with short form and you want to write your script this way, right? Or start with YouTube and here's a structure you need to follow and put your ideas into this structure. Where we want to start is what's easiest for you to do and stay consistent with, and that's going to become your source content. So that format may or may not become your final format that goes out to your platforms. But the idea is the initial insights, the content strategy that we talked about at the beginning has to come from your unique delivery style first. Then as we look into creating your actual content, we can also look at your unique delivery style to decide how we want to do things. So if you're not comfortable with conversation and off-the-cuff Q&A or those types of things, you're probably not going to want to do a podcast and you're going to want to go a little more scripted or maybe intentional long form, or you've got slides or a Loom video or screen share or something along those lines where you go into long form content. If you find the idea of talking for more than 5 minutes on your subject daunting, then you're probably going to want to lean really heavy into short form content. But you can see that we can reverse engineer everything starting with your natural communication pathway, because that's what's going to allow us to remain the most authentic as we extend out your ideas to these other platforms. So for now, just figure out which one suits you better: voice, video, writing, storytelling, teaching, whatever it is for you. And then we'll move on to module number 3, which is all about creating that source content. Module 3 is about transforming from a content creator to a content source. And this mindset shift changes everything. Most people feel pressure to be constantly creative, to come up with new ideas every single day. That's the creator mindset, and it's exhausting. The source mindset recognizes that you already have everything you need. Your expertise, your stories, your client results are all infinite content goldmines. Think about it this way. You've been solving problems in your industry for years. You've had conversations with clients. You've seen patterns. You've developed insights. All of that is content. You don't need to invent new information. You need to systematically extract what's already in your head. So when it comes to source content, there are basically 2 ideas to capture. One is unplanned ideas and the other are planned ideas. So unplanned ideas are going to be random thoughts and insights that hit you throughout the day. So for this, I recommend a voice note system. Now again, if your UDS is writing, then you can go ahead and take notes on your phone or in your journal or whatever it is that works for you. But the key is it needs to be something that you have on you at all times. So if you're going for a walk, you need to be able to write down a thought as it hits you. If you are waking up in the middle of the night, you need to have a notebook next to your bed with the ability to write it down next to you. This is why I prefer voice memos, because I always have my phone on me or something similar, and I can just pick it up and record that voice note. Personally, I do mine in Slack, because as soon as you record a voice memo in Slack, it transcribes it for you automatically, and I can just send all of those to myself so it's all in one place and it's really easy. Or I could create a channel where I dump all those ideas in. The key is you want to organize how you're keeping your information and how you're keeping your source content, but don't worry about the organization of when you're actually recording your source content. What I mean by that is don't worry about the structure. Don't worry if it's any good. Don't worry about if you make any sense. Don't worry about if ideas aren't connected or any of that. You just want to get it all out as thoroughly as possible in one go. It's a brain dump. It's a raw idea. Now, the other key here is you're going to get better at developing this as time goes on, but it's going to take some intentionality to develop what I call teaching moment awareness. So what's really difficult is when you're going through your day-to-day, it seems so normal and mundane to you, but there's value in what you're doing that other people would enjoy or find useful. And so those are the moments you have to be able to look at as almost a third party and get outside of yourself and see where those moments are. This is why brain dumping everything is so important, because then you can let the AI or your team help you pull out those value aspects that you want to share or those things that are valuable later on. But you want to start seeing your daily life as content opportunities. As founders, we just have to accept that content creation is a fundamental, high leverage task that has to be done consistently. And the people who accept this reality quickly and integrate it into their daily lives are the ones who win. James Clear talks about this in Atomic Habits, right? To build this habit, you have to make it obvious and easy. So this is why you want to have that ability to record your source content at any given moment in an easy way. Whether you're driving, whether you're coming out of a meeting, whatever it is, has to be something that you can do easily. Now, the second type of source content could be planned ideas. This is where you take a topic that you know you want to cover. So maybe it's a keyword phrase that people are searching for, or it's a frequently asked question that you're getting on sales calls all the time, or your team is getting on sales calls, or clients are asking you. Whatever it is, you start with the topic in mind, and then you work your way back into creating source content on that. So this is where you just brain dump whatever that topic is. You would brain dump everything you know about it, everything that comes to mind about it, all of your expertise, as well as any stories that are related. And that now becomes your source content specifically for a topic in mind. Now, when it comes to creating source content, there are two types of source content. One is created source content, which is basically everything we just talked about. It doesn't exist. You had an idea or something that came up during your day, or you started with a topic and brain dumped on it, and you went and intentionally created source content around it, where you brain dump or rant your idea. The second is existing source content. So these could be things like maybe you've written a book in the past. Maybe you have a pretty robust PDF that you've written. Maybe you have a bunch of YouTube videos that you've already done the work on, or blogs, or email copy. Anything in existence already could also be used as source content. But the idea here is that 5-minute brain dump or 10-minute brain dump or your existing source content with the process I'm going to show you here can then become a YouTube video, multiple short form videos, several social media posts, B-roll reels, email content, blog posts, etc. And this is what I call the content multiplication effect. The key is understanding that your expertise is the source, and content is just different ways of packaging that expertise for different audiences and platforms. Most people think they need to be constantly creative, but creativity isn't about coming up with new ideas. It's about finding new ways to share what you already know. Module 4 is where we get into the machine, and this is where most people get AI completely wrong. Now, let me be very clear. What everybody's talking about right now, feeding your best performing content into AI systems, creating tone and vocabulary guidelines, telling it what you sound like, we're not doing any of that. The problem with basic AI, everybody thinks that just by training ChatGPT with their voice, they're going to be able to pump out content that makes sense. But that's not enough. And just because ChatGPT sounds like you doesn't mean it's going to be able to make up for your lack of expertise in content strategy. Think about it this way. You could spend all day long Googling whatever medical condition you think you have or your medical symptoms. You can take and compile all of that research and maybe even put it in AI to help you understand it and take that to your doctor. But your doctor, who has 10, 20, 30, 40 years of experience of actually applying that knowledge in different circumstances, different nuances, different contexts, is going to have way more understanding of that knowledge or that research than you ever would with no experience. And AI works the same way, right? Sure, it can go do all the research. It can go look through all the things on the internet and can pull the best frameworks. It can look at the best posts and how they're performing. But to actually be able to take that knowledge and apply it in the way that somebody with 10, 20, 30, 40 years of experience would be able to do, there's a huge knowledge gap there. And so essentially with AI, you're really just working with an entry-level content writer or content strategist, right? Versus working with somebody that's been in the business, has been around and applied that knowledge in different ways is going to be much more effective when actually being able to implement that information. And so in that way, AI is only as good as the expertise and the knowledge of the person using it and guiding it. Also, AI is going to show you what it thinks you want to hear. So if there's any sort of bias or any way that you're leaning and asking your questions or your prompts, it's going to attach to that and it's going to validate whatever that thing is and go off in that direction, not because it's right, because it thinks it's what you want to hear. And so even if you get AI tools that say they're specifically for content creation or that they'll create you the next viral content, it's still all about the strategy and what you put into it. Because a lot of times those AI tools are just fancy interfaces that are put on top of regular ChatGPT with basic prompts underneath. So you end up sounding like everybody else because what it's doing is studying your voice patterns, but it has no idea why you say what you say or how each piece of content actually fits into your bigger business goals. It's mimicking your style without understanding your strategy. The way that I think about it is for AI to work strategically, you need 3 elements working together. First, your unique expertise in positioning. I call this your brain, essentially, right? So if we have this over here, this is everything that we talked about before, your founder DNA, as well as your ongoing story bank. This is how we bring the personality and the authenticity to it and how your unique insights and stories can be pulled into everything that you're doing. And not just the insights, right, and how you sound, but this is also what you believe, how you think about problems, and how you see the world. Now, the cool thing about us doing all of this source content and it coming from you, that source content regularly gets analyzed by the AI to describe your brand voice. So if you've ever done the work to train your ChatGPT to sound like you or write in your voice, this is essentially doing this over and over again so that it's constantly updated and using a really good piece of content that's actually coming from you and that's a good representation of your voice that it can then mirror later on. So it will create brand voice guidelines from the source content you're putting in and continually update those in your file. So once we have that, next we have proven marketing frameworks. Okay, this is also human psychology. Marketing works best when it mirrors human psychology, right? That's really all it is. Marketing is getting people's attention and getting them to take a certain action, which is all about human behavior and human psychology. So the more that we can put in there, as far as your marketing frameworks, content frameworks, storytelling frameworks, NLP language programming, sales, copywriting, offer creation, marketing, branding, all of that, that's all going in here. But there's another part to this here that's missing if we just have these 2. And that is the current trends and patterns that are working right now on social media. So we do this with a viral database. This is where you can insert the links of creators in your niche and creators outside your niche. And every 2 weeks, the AI will go look at their top performing posts, videos, static posts, graphics, all the above. And it will analyze and see why those posts are actually doing well and why they work. And then with our system, it will then strategically pull out some of those posts or formats that make sense for your brand and help you create content that's following the best practices of what's working right now in your industry. And this is important because content formats are changing constantly. Now, here's what's critical. We don't go 100% AI. You still need a human in the mix because there's creative judgment that has to be made. We're creating content for humans at the end of the day, right? We're not creating content for AI to consume. The algorithm is just trying to match human preference. So if you remove the human element entirely, you lose that connection and authenticity that people are looking for. This also helps keep AI within the guardrails that make sense for your brand and act as that kind of final barrier before anything crazy happens. So at the end of the day, when you're working with AI, you don't want to just feed it your content and your voice and instructions for that. Right? You want to give it context about your actual positioning, your client's problems, and your unique approach to solving them. Create simple frameworks like, when explaining this concept, always start with the problem, give a real example, explain the solution in steps, and connect it back to the transformation. This way, AI understands not just how you sound, but how you think. You're also going to want to set up basic quality control. Every piece of AI-generated content or work or whatever it is that you're creating should be reviewed by someone, a real human, who understands your brand and your clients. And you want to ask yourself, does this actually sound like me? Does this serve my ideal client? And does this move them closer to working with me? If any answer is no, don't publish it. And remember, AI should amplify your human creativity, not replace it. This is why most AI tools are having success being used by experts in their industry. These people are already good at what they do, and they're just using AI to speed up the parts that take time, like research, formatting, repurposing, right? But keep the strategic thinking, the personal insights, and the creative judgment in human hands. That's how you create content that converts instead of content that just sounds good. Now, before we move on to module 5, where I explain the psychology behind content that actually converts prospects into buyers, I want to recap what we've learned so far, because none of this will actually work unless you completely shift the way you see content. So number 1, we started with understanding that content isn't just marketing, it's the foundation of modern branding that opens doors and attracts quality clients. Number 2, we then built your content operating system with the 4 phases that turn your expertise into a scalable machine. Number 3, we identified your unique delivery style, so content feels natural instead of forced. And number 4, we created your source content system so you never run out of material because you're working from your existing expertise. Number 5, we set up the machine so AI amplifies your voice strategically instead of making you sound generic. Now, I'm not saying any of these changes are easy, but they are necessary and they will save you tons of time and make you far more money in the long run. So if you do want help getting this system implemented completely hands-off, specific to your business, then I'll leave a link down below in the description. You can click that, speak with my team, and we'll see if we can help. But whether you work with us or not, let's continue with module 5. At this point, you have a machine that creates content in your voice, but not all content is created equal. Some content builds awareness, some builds trust, and some drives sales. And module 5 is about strategically engineering each type for maximum impact. And what I'm about to show you is why you can get tons of engagement but 0 sales. There's a specific psychological sequence your prospects go through before they buy. And if you mess up the sequence, you'll stay stuck getting likes but no clients. Now, this comes from Russell Brunson's perfect webinar structure, where the 3 secrets within the webinar are basically instilling the 3 beliefs that every buyer has to have before they purchase. And I'm going to show you exactly how to build these beliefs through your content. So most people think about funnels like top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel content. They think about it as sales steps. But really, I want you to think about it as content psychology. How content moves people from unaware to ready to buy through belief shifts. This is why content is so powerful, because the best way to instill belief shifts is through repeated exposure and storytelling, and there's no better way to do that than with content. Now, this is less about what objections do they have and more about their mindset and what really needs to be present for them to feel safe making a purchasing decision. Okay, so the first belief that you have to tackle. Now, this one is arguably the most important, which is why we spent so much time on it earlier in the video, is because if you miss this one, beliefs 2 and 3 are not going to help you. You're going to lose the sale if this one isn't there first. So it's the vehicle, meaning they have to believe that your vehicle, whatever that thing is the way to get them from where they are now up the mountain to where they want to be, right? And so you need to build belief that your method, again, whatever it is, organic content, cold email, YouTube, funnels, whatever your thing is, they need to believe without a shadow of a doubt that it is the way to get what they want. This is how you create a movement. Because if you think about it, right? If you know that this thing is going to get you the results that you want, regardless of price, you're all in. You're going to figure out a way to make it happen. It's why broke college kids spend $200 on Starbucks, regardless of what's in their bank, right? They know they need it. They know they want it. They're willing to move mountains in order to find that money to go buy their Starbucks. And this is essentially what you want to create with your product, is just rock solid belief that this is the way. Okay, so once they believe that your method is the right vehicle, the second belief you have to build is the internal belief. Hey, I believe that this vehicle is the way to get where I want, but I don't think it's going to work for me. Maybe I've tried similar things before and failed. Maybe it's a confidence thing for me. Maybe it's this, that, or the other, whatever it is for them. The second thing is tackling that internal belief. Will it work for me? So if you're in fitness and somebody's tried 19 diets in the past, right? They may be wondering, how is this one going to be different? How am I haven't been able to stick to a diet in the past. I'm not disciplined. I don't have willpower. All these things are going through their mind, whatever it is for them, right? And that's the internal belief that you have to topple over. And then the third one, so once they believe in your vehicle and believe that it is the way to get where they want, they believe that they can do it. The third one is there's usually some sort of external belief that pops up that we have to overcome. This external belief is something outside of themselves. So yes, I believe this method works. Yes, I believe I can do it, but there's this thing that's holding me back. Yes, I believe that intermittent fasting is going to finally allow me to lose those 20 pounds. Yes, I actually do believe that I could do this. You showed me how easy the process was, and I see that it's not that it's about discipline or willpower or any of these other things, or maybe there's a community or accountability, whatever it is. I believe that I can do it. But you know what? I have 3 kids and a husband that brings home crumble cookies every day, and there's no way that I'm going to be able to be around that stuff and cook for the kids and be able to follow this intermittent fasting diet, right? Or, okay, yes, I believe that funnels are the way for me. I believe that I could build a funnel, but you know what? I don't know how to run ads. I don't know how I'm going to get traffic to my funnel. Whatever that external belief is, that's the third one we have to topple. But most importantly, you can see how if we don't get this one right, if we don't have a rock solid belief in the vehicle, none of these matter, right? Because I could believe that I could do it. I could believe that whatever this external belief, I could overcome that obstacle as well. But if I don't believe that this is the right way to get me to where I want to be, none of these other things matter. I'm not even thinking about those things. So that's why the order in which you tackle these, especially when it comes to like a webinar or a video sales letter, matter. But the benefit with content, it's a little more forgiving, right? You can do a few of these posts a week. You can do a few of these posts, then you can do a few of these posts, and then repeat the cycle. So they're constantly getting exposure to all of it. So this now translates directly to our content strategy. And we think about organizing content into 3 categories. So the first is top of funnel content. Now the goal with top of funnel content is to get eyeballs, right? We want, and notice I say eyeballs and not views, because you don't need 1 million views to make this work. Right? But you do need attention, and you do need to be able to stop the scroll and catch people in their tracks, right? They're on social media, they're doing something, they're in the middle of something else, they're in a different mindset than whatever it is the thing that you're trying to push. And so we have to understand how to come in and interrupt that conversation in a way that makes that person go, what is this? I want to learn more. So top of funnel is all about getting eyeballs. This is the content that's going to establish you as the expert and get you in front of new people. And when I say establish you as the expert, all it has to do is answer this question: why should I listen to you? Right? Because again, they're scrolling, they're in the middle of something, whatever they're doing, they're looking for a different video on YouTube, whatever it is. And then your thing pops up and they want to know, well, why is this intermittent fasting thing different? Why should I listen to this girl? How is she any different than XYZ, right? And all the other people that I see. So we want your top of funnel content to simultaneously answer, why should I listen to you? While also getting you in front of new people. Now the format for this can be anything. They could be educational posts that solve immediate problems. They could be industry insights. A great way to do this is contrarian viewpoints, right? So, hey, everybody in the industry is talking about keto, but what you don't know is XYZ, and that's why intermittent fasting is really the best way to blah, 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 whatever, right? But it can also be entertaining. It can also be authentic personal content telling your story. Either way, the format is less important. The idea is these people don't know us, they're unaware of who we are, and we need to show up in a way that is showing them why they should listen to us. So there's a lot of different ways you can do that. You can put in a credibility statement, right? And it can be subtle. I've done it in this video, right? We work with hundreds of business owners, something like that. You could even borrow credibility in these situations. So if you're just starting out and you're like, how do I get a credibility statement in my top of funnel content? You can do this by borrowing it, right? So I've studied the top 5 old school marketers in the business for the last 3 months. And here are the 5 things I've noticed that they all have in common, right? Or I've worked with the top 3 NFL athletes for the last 5 years. They all have these 2 things in common when it comes to discipline or whatever it is, right? But you can see how there's broad awareness there. I'm reaching, to people top of funnel that have never heard of me before. And now there's some sort of authority and credibility that's being built in there as well. This is also why when we set up your pinned post at the beginning, why that's so important, right? Because somebody that may come in through a top of funnel post has no idea who you are. Maybe there was something in there that caught their attention. They land on your profile right away. They can tell, oh yes, this is something I'm interested in by your bio and what you do. They can tell that they fall into your target market essentially, right? And then they can see your pinned posts at the top, which are probably going to be the ones that they view first. And so now they know, yes, I want to hit follow. I want more from this person. Whereas if they land on an empty, unoptimized page, right, they're like, oh, cool, that was a one-off post. I'm good. I'm going to keep scrolling. Second is middle of funnel content. Now, the goal of our middle of funnel content, this is to generate conversations. This is where the lead mechanism or your lead magnets come into play, right? And this is where ManyChat or automating responses to your comments and your DMs come into play. DM me this keyword or comment this thing to get this free lead magnet, and that gets a conversation going in the DMs, right? So we're taking these eyeballs and putting them ideally in the DMs, which can happen from comments as well. So even if somebody comments, you can then open up that conversation further in a DM. That's what we want to do there, where we can start to build that conversation, that connection, and further qualify and see if that person is actually a good lead. Now, here's the key with middle of funnel content. This is where you want to build vehicle belief. This is where you want to show, hey, here's the problem you're experiencing, here's the solution. And that's why top of funnel content a lot of times is going to be more focused on owning the problem, right? Or speaking to the pain, because then once you have that and you have their attention, then you can introduce them to the vehicle as a solution. But if you lead with the vehicle to somebody that doesn't know you, right, that's going to be an easy thing for them to scroll off. They're not thinking about that. Their mindset is in their daily frustrations and what their pain is. And so if you can speak to that, that's how you can stop the scroll, and then you can start to bridge that gap with your middle of funnel content. Hey, there is a solution out there that works. This is it. Now, within middle of funnel content, you can also start to instill your internal belief here. So by you educating on the vehicle and you educating on different components of the vehicle, right, you're starting to show them through repeated exposure, oh, wow, I didn't realize it was that simple. Oh, wow, this thing I overcomplicated in my head, watch this reel. It just breaks it right down. Oh, wow, this is so simple, right? How many times have you seen a reel or something pop up on your feed where you're like, oh, I didn't realize it was that simple, and you save it for later, right? That's what you want your middle of funnel content to do. And then finally, that leads us to, of course, bottom of funnel content. The goal here is obviously sales. This is something we do sparingly, usually once or twice per week, if that. And there's a couple different facets of it. So one is the direct drive to the sale, which is like the hand raiser post. All right, so this is like, hey, I'm looking for 3 more people that I can help lose 10 pounds before the holidays. DM me this and we'll see if it's a fit. Or we just did a reel actually on my Instagram recently. Let me show you. So where it's like, hey, this is what it looks like to work with us. This is what we do. This is the result we get. If you want more information, DM us. We'll see if it's a fit, right? So those types of things. You can also be very direct with it, where it's more like, hey, we've helped hundreds of business owners get all of their content done in less than 4 hours per month. We have 2 more spots open for this month. DM me this and we'll see if it's a fit. But you're basically pushing directly to the sales conversation. Now, the other way that you can do this, which you're not necessarily limited to 1 to 2 posts per month. Obviously, if we're going direct, right? Hey, this is the program I have. This is the result I get. If you want it, let me know and let's have a conversation to see if you're a fit. This is more the social proof case study route. And so if you do this in a storytelling way where people are going to get value and actually break down the tactics, this now sets up the credibility. It also usually will help eliminate the internal belief as well as the external belief. So if you know that there's a really big external belief that people keep hitting up against, you can use social proof to come against this, right? So an example of this is, this is my client, Mike. When Mike came to me, Mike was really worried about his willpower. He was like not able to stick to a workout plan ever. He was so busy, all these things, right? Whatever the external belief is. He was growing his company. He didn't know how he was going to work out 2 hours a day. And so we put him on this plan. He wasn't working out 2 hours a day. He wasn't on a diet. He wasn't doing all these things that you don't want to do. And look at Mike now. Here's the results, right? He lost 5% body fat and this, that, and the other. And so with that, I now am creating this social proof and case studies that's showing results. At the end of the day, whatever format you're using, you're basically addressing their final concerns and making it easy for them to take the next step. Now, again, here's what's really important. The way you overcome limiting beliefs is not by telling people what to do or what they should do, right? If you think about a deeply held belief that you had in your own life, how did you end up shifting it? How did you break it? Usually it came through the form of a few things, maybe through a relationship, right? You met somebody, they kept telling stories about it, and you saw that they were actually able to do it. Or multiple relationships where you had a few people in your circle that were telling stories basically of, here's how I did it, right? Or you're seeing their beliefs and adopting those, right? But the key here is it's usually through repetitive exposure and stories of someone doing it. Even if it's a belief that you held, that you were against something for so many years and so deeply seated, it was a belief or a value that you held that you were against it, through getting to know somebody that maybe was in that camp or was on the other side, right, of something that you never would have entertained before, just by way of getting to know that person and getting to build a friendship with them. And then you start to see and you start learning more about their way of thinking. And then you see it's not what you thought it was, right? And over time, your beliefs start to soften and maybe even change and adopt to that other side. That's why content is so powerful, because you can basically do this where you're building this relationship. And if you do it right, people do feel that they have an authentic connection and that they're invested in whatever it is. And you're taking them on this journey and continually telling these stories, showing other people that are like them in different situations, going through the process, and slowly but surely you start to break down some of these limiting beliefs. That's what content allows you to do. And again, if you think about human psychology, humans really have not changed that much in hundreds, thousands of years. Right? We still have our animal brains and our instincts and all of these things that are hardwired into us. It just looks different because of the technology or the style of the era or whatever it is, right? But if you look at how business was done back in the 80s, back in the 90s, right? Business was done with a handshake and face-to-face meetings, old school. You'd meet somebody, you'd have multiple phone calls, you'd go to lunch, your kids would go to school with their kids, you'd build trust over time, and then you would call them to write your financial plan, right? And we're no different now. Just because people can click an ad and land on a funnel and most people don't want to talk to somebody, they just want to get whatever the thing is that they want, that doesn't mean that it's obsolete. It also doesn't mean that the majority of your buyers are going to click on that ad once, land on your funnel, and convert. That's about 10%, maybe 15 to 20% if you're lucky, depending on your market. The world still needs that handshake mentality now more than ever, especially when trust, person-to-person trust, is at its lowest. But the beautiful thing with content is instead of you doing all these one-to-one meetings where you're limited, right, and you can only reach so many people, you can now do this at scale. You can create a post or create a video once that took you a few minutes or however long to create that thing one time, and it's being seen over and over and over again, building that relationship. And when you're consistent with content, it's like going through all of those meetings, all of those touch points, all of those things that happen in building a relationship are now happening online. And the psychology of it all is it's no different. People feel just as connected when you do this correctly as they do if they were in a one-on-one situation. And that's why staying consistent is so important. Why knowing your offer positioning is so important and making sure that your content aligns with it, and why knowing your avatar is so important. You see how it all starts to work together. Your content is systematically building the trust and relationship that used to take months, if not years, of in-person meetings, but you're doing it at scale through strategic content that moves people through those 3 beliefs. All right, module 6 is super important because this is where your content system becomes a self-improving business asset. And it's what separates the entrepreneurs who scale to millions from those who burn out at 6 figures. Most people create content and hope it works, or they track the wrong thing entirely. They look at likes and comments and views, and they think that that means success, and then they start optimizing for those numbers. So if something got great views, they start trying to double down on that last post. But the key here is you need to track what actually drives business, not just vanity metrics. The key is understanding which content gets you the results that you actually care about. And so that means you have to define what results you actually care about for your business. Whether that's book calls, leads, sales conversations, maybe a higher close rate, whatever it is for you, not just engagement. So think about it like this. You need to know which type of content is actually moving your business forward. So maybe your talking head videos get fewer likes than your trending reels, but the talking head videos are actually the ones that get people to book calls with you. And if you're only looking at engagement, you'd stop doing the content that actually makes you money. So we do this in a couple of different ways. So first, we track the actual format of the content and how it's doing in a simple spreadsheet here that the content specialist fills out directly from the insights on the platform. So they would log into Instagram when something posts, and they would get the data and plug it into the sheet, or Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, TikTok, etc. Now, the thing here is we have different drop downs for the style. So maybe it's talking head, maybe I used a whiteboard, maybe I used the remarkable, whatever it is. And then we have that all tracked by the different metrics. Every metric is on this sheet, so we would have to define what's a win for us. So maybe it's engagement score, maybe it's the number of shares. The other thing that we have here is we also track, and so we'd have to define what's a win for us. So maybe it's an engagement score, maybe it's a share ratio, whatever it is, right? And what we can do is at the end of every month, we can go back and look at what posts performed the best, and then we can double down on those. Just like with ad creative, right? We're gonna look at our best performing hooks and our best performing creative, and then we're gonna double down on those winners. So you're basically identifying your winners and strategically studying that to see, was it the hook? Was it something else? What was it about this that made it a winner? And then how can I iterate on those winners, right? So every month I'm identifying the winners and I'm coming up with ways that I can iterate on those winners. And that's going to be probably 80% of the new content that I put out next month, right? So it's just, maybe it's the same hook and a different message behind the hook. Maybe it's a different hook and the same body. Maybe it's the exact same piece of content and I film it in a different place, in a different shirt, in a different background, in a different way. So for example, I had this post here where the original post was me talking to camera, but I had basically this whiteboard behind me. So this post crushes every time we do it. And so we redid the exact same post, exact same info in a different format. And now instead of being with a whiteboard, I'm pointing to the graphics as they're coming up. Another example of this is basically taking a post that does well and repurposing it into different formats. So this post has a slightly different hook, but it's the same post as this one here that came in text. And then this also gets put over on Instagram with this video here with the hook on top. Now, another thing that you want to look at for us, booked calls, conversions, and leads are probably our biggest metric. Now, the trouble with this is you want to be careful here that you don't 100% optimize for the business result. Because the thing with content is, again, we're relationship building, we're telling stories, we're breaking limiting beliefs. And so not everything is 100% measurable when it comes to content. For example, our ad costs, right? We run paid ads on Meta. And when we post content, when we have more consistent content out, our cost per book call goes down. Can I directly correlate that? Do I have hard data that 100% proves that? No, not really. It's difficult to track that back to this piece of content or this specific thing or this type of content did that. But it's very noticeable and we can tell. And so obviously it's something that we want to keep doing. Not something that I can track 100%. Also, when our leads come in, they don't always come in directly from a piece of content that's trackable. They may have come in through an ad and then they're getting exposed to all this content for a few weeks and we subjectively get that feedback from them on the sales call. And they say, oh, I've been following Gianna for weeks and I finally thought it's time to jump in, right? Or I have people that have been following for years and consuming content. And when I say following for years, I would have never noticed because they're not liking, they're not commenting, they're not DMing, they're just watching. And this is very, very common. Another reason you can't track engagement and take it to the bank or use that to optimize your content. So just be very careful when you're tracking attribution for your content because it's not black and white. There's content that you're creating that no metric will show you the actual impact that it has on your business, right? Like the post that I showed you earlier, that God doesn't want you to be wealthy post that's on the front page of my Instagram, that's not trackable. I couldn't tell you how many leads came from that, but there's so many conversations I've had where people now are following my brand on a different level, or they're more invested in me on a different level, or people have wanted to come work for me on a different level that they didn't before this post. So there's non-measurable, non-ROI specific wins that come from content. So just be careful when you're tracking things that it's not 100% black and white. And then the other thing you can look at is directly at ManyChat, right? So I could tell that this particular post here that we did on hiring video editors got us 102 leads. However, you can see that only 43% of those guys clicked through. I think there was an issue with our automations on that example. But then I might want to go back and optimize, well, maybe the message didn't get the click-through rate that we wanted, and I can rerun that same post next month and change up the flow on the ManyChat automation, right? Or maybe I want to run that exact same post again in a different format with a different hook. So once you've done that, and obviously you want to have a good amount of content going out to do this. It's really difficult to do this on a brand new account in the first 30 days, but you can kind of start to piece that together. You'll be able to tell using that tracker that I showed you, well, if I covered this topic and it did, marginally better than these others, I want to keep going down that path of following this topic, right? And find other iterations that work. So your first step is to identify your winners, and that is going to be about 80% of your content for the next month. The second part is a testing budget. So again, just like ads, we can be a little more aggressive here because we're not actually putting spend to the budget, right? But maybe it's 20% of my posts next month are geared towards totally new ideas. Maybe there's a trend that I've seen, or maybe there's a style of post that I've been wanting to try out that's completely different, or a topic that I wanted to throw in the mix that I'm not really sure is how it's going to do. I would want, if I'm posting 30 different posts next month, then maybe 20% of those would be 6 posts that I can experiment with, right? You could do 10%, you could do 20%, depending on how many ideas you have that you want to test. And then once you repeat this process, you'll see in the following month, how did these do? Were there any new winners that we were able to create or identify that we can continue on as we go? So aside from tracking and refining, the biggest mistake people make is trying to hire help before they understand what actually works. They expect someone else to figure out their core message, their positioning, how they should talk about their offer. They come into a content agency and expect them to just blow them up and blow up their leads and blow up their offer, but they don't actually have a proven acquisition system yet, or they don't know what messaging is actually resonating with their audience yet, and they don't know how to sell their offer. And that is all founder level work. You have to do that yourself first by actually creating content. I think it's one of the best ways to do it, and you can see what resonates. You can find your voice in the market, and by creating that content, you're forcing yourself, just like any good writer, you're forcing yourself to refine your own thoughts and refine the own messaging you're using to describe your offer and to talk about your unique proposition and all these different things that could not be figured out as well or to that level by somebody else. And so you will always get so much further ahead if you do this work first. That's why I think learning copywriting, learning persuasion, all of that is just, again, human psychology that's being built into your content. When you know those things, you can do almost anything with it. And when you understand how to package your offer using those skills, you're unbeatable. And then at that point, you can start to hire help to take some of this off your hands. Now, when you do scale, you want to build systems that don't break when you grow. The mistake that most people make is building systems around individuals instead of building systems that individuals can plug into. So for example, my cousin is a very talented social media manager. Let's build our system around her and let her run our social media system. But then she leaves and you have no semblance of a system that works no matter who is in that system. And now you find yourself at the going rate or the market rate for somebody that quote unquote talented to plug into that role. And now you're paying 2, 3, 4 times more, but you still don't have a system that works. And so what you want is your system should be bigger than any single person. If someone leaves or gets sick, you shouldn't lose months of momentum rebuilding everything. For systems to work without you micromanaging, you need clear processes, quality standards that anybody can follow, that are black and white and in a checklist, and regular check-ins with the people that are running your systems that focus on results, not tasks, right? So what did you achieve versus what did you actually do today? The goal is to add team members without proportionally increasing your management time. And that only happens when your systems are documented, repeatable, and designed to maintain quality at scale. And that is the entire system complete. You probably started this video feeling overwhelmed by content creation, maybe avoiding it altogether, or spending way too much time on it for mediocre results. But let me show you exactly why it's worth investing the time to implement the system and what results it's gotten for people just like you. And again, it's not saying that you implement the system and overnight you're going to be where they are, right? These are just showcasing some of the best results that can come when you get serious about content. Because David was exactly where you might be right now, and he knew that content was important, as we all do, but he was struggling to make it work for his personal training business. And then he implemented this exact system. His very first video using this approach got him 10 new clients. Not his first month or year, but the actual first video he decided to post. Now again, unusual results. They had a great funnel set up already, but today over 50% of his new business comes from content and his revenue grew 30% in just 9 months. Loretta had spent over $100,000 on marketing agencies in the past that promised results but delivered nothing, which I'm sure a lot of you watching can relate to. She was stuck at 12 to 15 new patients per month and couldn't break through that ceiling, but after implementing the system, she doubled her income each month and now consistently brings in 25 plus new patients monthly. She went from local patients only to attracting clients from around the world. Vanessa had years of long-form content sitting there unused. She knew she needed to repurpose it for social media, but couldn't quite figure out how, and she said it perfectly. I really needed another me. And after implementing the system, she went from having a backlog of years worth of unused content to having 3 months of content scheduled and ready to go. Complete freedom. Charlie now gets 30,000 impressions every single week from his content, completely free, no paid ads. And this has never been about posting more content. None of our clients got lucky with one video. They have a system that simply produces leads. And that's the power of thinking in systems instead of tactics or strategies. All right, so from here, you have 2 choices. One is take everything I've taught you in this video and try to implement it yourself. Build the systems, train the AI, hire and manage the team, and figure out all the technical integrations. It's totally fine by me. Everything you need, I've explained here. Number 2 is to let my team and I plug in this process done for you, train your dedicated content specialist, and have you generating high converting content in the next 30 days instead of the next 6 months. If you're not interested, like I said, that's completely fine. Make sure to like and subscribe for more free value. But for those of you who are interested, here's what this looks like. We place a pre-trained content specialist in your business who already knows the system inside and out. They handle everything from content creation to posting and optimization while you focus on what you do best. We create your marketing blueprint that captures your unique positioning and voice. We set up the AI systems trained specifically on your expertise, and we handle all the technical integrations, and we provide ongoing support to ensure that everything runs smoothly. Now, being transparent, this isn't for everyone. We have incredibly high standards to maintain a reputation. So if you're already doing at least $25,000 per month and are committed to building a real brand and want to see if you qualify, click the link in the description below to book a strategy call with us. On that call, we'll audit your current situation, show you exactly how the system would work in your specific business, and if it's a good fit, we'll discuss how to get started. But whether you implement this for yourself or you work with us, the most important thing is that you take action. The businesses that dominate in 2026 will be the ones that build systematic authority through content. So click the link below to book your strategy call, and I'll see you in the next video.